Hi, and thanks for watching. In this video, I want to look at the use of the wrist in terms of our progression with Chen style Tai Chi training. There's two aspects that I wanted to look at. The first one is to use the proper use of the wrist and the proper training for the wrist in relation to grappling. Right? So this is a soft, fluid motion that allows us to direct power through the wrist into the hand, into the palm, and use the techniques for grappling martial purposes. The second aspect in terms of the training for the wrists that I want to look at is, of course, using the wrists for striking. These two different aspects roughly correspond to the training that's done either in old frame Chen style Tai Chi or new frame Chen style Tai Chi. And so, of course, let's look first at the reason why this is an important thing to pay attention to. One of the main things, of course, is that nowadays we tend to use our hands and our arms and, of course, our wrists very differently than if we look back to the 1600s in Chen village and how they were using their arms and hands and wrists back at that time. Nowadays we have far greater emphasis and activities where we're using fine motor control in terms of cell phone use, in terms of touch screens, in terms of typing on keyboards, so on and so forth. There is much more that's required in terms of having the wrists and arms just held steady to let the fine motor control of the fingers and thumbs have their movement. This is quite different than if we look at what I assume one of the main activities that would be happening in Chen village in the 1800s or 1600s, which would be related to farming. So we have digging, we have hoeing, we have planting, we have leading maybe oxen by a rope, right? All these sorts of things where there is a transfer of power from the core of the body through to the arms, right? There is a use of the hands and the fingers, but it's mainly as a way to connect ourselves to, say, a shovel or some other tool, a hand tool, a hammer, and then direct the force through, right? So there's a very different kind of use than what we have today. So today we have something where we have high dexterity in our fingers, but poor development and sense of movement and connection through to the wrists and arms. So this is one of the additional challenges that we have nowadays, and an additional aspect of something that we need to pay attention to and develop as part of our training. So the first part, and this is again related to old frame Chen style Tai Chi, though it's relevant to many other internal styles of martial arts, is to find this relaxed extension through the wrist into the palm. And so what we are looking for is something where we want to have the extension, which means the extension requires that the fingers become extended, right? But the wrist and the forearm remains relatively free of tension, right? So when we find this extension, there is an extension that introduces tension into the tissues and one that reduces the tension. Right. And of course, what we want is something where instead of the fingers being held stiff, we want something where they're extended, not limp, right, but relaxed. Right. At the same time, we need the proper positioning through the wrist so that the force can be directed through the forearm and into, in this case, in this position, into the palm, right, into this area of the hand. Right. That includes the base of the fingers, and this is related to grappling, right? In Chen style Tai Chi, we're not doing a grab this way by curling our fingers, right? We're doing a grab by closing using the base of the fingers to hold this way, right? So that we're controlling, we're hemming in, but we're still allowing ourselves the ability to switch the hand positioning, to be able to constantly change and adjust. As soon as we grab, then suddenly we've introduced tension and we've introduced a point on our opponent that is fixed. Right? And that can lead to having your opponent take advantage of that Whereas having a firm connection that allows the sensing, this is the purpose of this kind of training. The reason for having the wrists to be something where they're fluid, relaxed, and extended, so that we maintain the sensitivity, right? And we can still adequately direct our force from the core of the body through. Because when we're doing the grappling in Chen style Tai Chi, is this kind of posture here, is this kind of connection here, or is this kind of connection here, right? This kind of connection through here to here, from here on the back of the wrist to here, outside edge. To be able to fine-tune this, I think the best option is the one that's already provided for us within the training of the routines. Old frame, first routine and second routine. Once we're familiar with the postures and the movements, then we can pay attention to the extension through the wrist and the positioning of the hand and the fingers, so that we end up with something where from here we end up to here, right? From this posture here to here. There's just that small adjustment that's required so that we have the reduction of tension through the hand and the fingers, and this extension from the forearm into the palm of the hand. When the hand is in this position, then we want this idea that we can extend into the back of the hand, so say pressing down here. This kind of posture here, right? So that we have the ability to extend and use the weight of the body and the arm to press down. When there's tension in the wrist, then of course we're not able to do that. This is a little bit like trying to take our cell phone and use that to lead our ox. Not gonna work. If we have a rope, we can pull the ox this way. If we have our cell phone here and we're doing this, not quite as effective, I would think. So, from this first important aspect of training to get the proper use of the wrist, right? This fluid, relaxed extension and direction of force through the wrist into the palm and into the back of the hand. The second aspect comes again from new frame, and this is to use the wrists for striking, right? And so we have, this comes from the idea within the 8 Jin, 8 powers, right? We have the elbow, right? Zai, Lian, Zou. Zou is elbow, and then Ka. And often that's practiced, of course, with striking with the elbow. But elbow includes any limb where the joint bends. So this can include the knee, can include the hip, and of course includes the wrist. So that we're looking at this kind of strike, this kind of strike. Right? And so we have something now where what we're doing is we're directing our force into the wrist as opposed to through the wrist. For the first part of the training, where we want to keep the emphasis on grappling, we want this sensitivity, we want this extension of power through the wrist into the hand. But now we're looking at something where we want to take that same power from here and direct it into the end of the bones here. If we're going to take a force that's coming in, redirect it so that we're here, so we have that first kind of power, hem the arm in, and then use the base of the palm, the ends of the bones here, wrist bones, for a short, small strike. And so the reason I view this as a second thing is partly because it comes with new frame training, of course, but also if we don't first have this ability to have the proper relaxed fluid motion and the sensitivity, then we won't be able to adequately direct the power into the wrist. And of course, after that, when we need to reset and return to the fluid grappling, smooth motion, we'll have trouble with that as well. So for this training, we can use a drill that comes again through New Frame, and that's just working on striking with the wrist and finding the way of generating that force. And so it happens with 4 directions. First, both wrists strike up, both wrists strike down. Both wrists strike to one side and then to the other. For, of course, up and down, it's that thing of trying to find the coordination high and low. When we're doing the both to one side, we're of course doing 2 different strikes. One is with the outside of the wrist here, and the other one is with the base of the palm here. Right? So it's this kind of posture as opposed to just wiggling them back and forth. Right? I want to find the line of force that allows the bend of the wrist to drive the force into the opponent here, into the opponent here, and of course same on the other side there. So it's up, down to one side and then to the other. And then when we're feeling comfortable with that, then we can do up and down on both sides, out and in. First, it's relaxed, trying to get used to the coordination, thinking about how we're applying the proper alignment and the proper coordination of things. And then when we have that, then we can try adding in a little bit of explosive power, 发劲. And then, in terms of the 发劲, it's being able to still coordinate things so that we're going through these same motions. It's just that at the end moment, we're transferring the force from the core of the body through the shoulders into the striking points. Right. Gradually, as you get familiar with the motion, then you can be more and more precise and clear in terms of how to direct the force through the body. If there was the starting point for that is that it's not achieved so much with tensing things, right? So we're coming back to that same skill that we have to relearn, which is from the first stage where we're so used to using the hands and generating tension in the hands and tension thereby in the forearms and in the shoulders. We need to be able to take that away. And then from there, find this way of positioning the hands that is fluid and relaxed through from the shoulder girdle through to the forearms, extending down into the hands, right? And so when we have this fluid positioning and finding the position in relation to the core of the body, right, then it's something where we want to set the weight back as we extend the hands into those areas that we're using to strike, the inside and outside of the wrists here, the top of the wrist and the base of the palms here, and having it set so that the body is set to stabilize and allow the shoulders to stay solid but relaxed. Right. And then from there, we can first find the position, find the movements, coordinate the movements, then add the extra power, the snap, so on and so forth, right? It's tempting to speed up. It's hard for me to keep them slow, but once you find the motion, then you can run through the techniques again and again and again. As you do that, though, I encourage you to monitor the shoulders and make sure that you maintain the relaxation and the direction of the force through the body into the wrists, not into the shoulders, not into the forearms. So, first of all, recognizing that this is something that we don't practice because of our current use of how we use our hands more than with the fine motor control as opposed to the gross motor control. Of course, we do both, but there's far greater time spent practicing and training this kind of motion than this kind of motion. Right? So we need to put more emphasis and more attention into this little detail. From there, there's the two main aspects that I think are important to training. First and foremost is being able to find this fluid, relaxed motion that directs force through the wrists and into the hands, right? Using the fingers for extension, but not allowing them to have the force directed into them. From there, and getting used to this way of holding the arms, positioning the hands, moving through the routine, then from there, we can add the aspects related to New Frame, which is this striking technique that's used with the outside and inside of the wrist. The elbow technique, but applied to the wrist. So I hope this information is helpful for you. Keep training, keep practicing, and take care.